too.
That's what he want. Hey, you want some meat?
Now y'all come out the room.
You want some meat? Yeah, you want some meat.
Yeah, okay, y'all come out the room.
You probably can give him a piece of meat a little bit.
Yeah, we go out the room.
News right now, deputies in Tunica County are searching for this man. They say he is armed and dangerous. I'm Carolyn Serta. Deputies say Markello Braxton is wanted for killing the mother of his child and shooting his 2 children.
Nykeria was 30 years old.
A young mother, a 6-year-old daughter. A home turned into a crime scene. On July 11, 2025, 30-year-old Nykeria Jude was murdered inside her Mississippi home, shot by the man she once trusted with her heart. Her daughter barely survived. And the killer, her ex-boyfriend, Markello Braxton. Now I need y'all to sit down for this one, because this isn't just a story about murder. It's a story about control, betrayal, and the silent epidemic of domestic violence. If you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay until the end.
Nykeria Jude was a 30-year-old mother living in Robinsonville, Mississippi. To those who knew her, she was the kind of person who made you feel like family, whether you were or not. She worked hard, loved harder, and devoted her life to raising her daughter, Marlaysia. Friends describe her as warm, funny, and full of life. She took pride in being a mom. Every photo, every video, she was always smiling beside her daughter. That bond between them, unbreakable. But behind the laughter and Instagram posts, there was a part of Nykeria's life she didn't share with many. His name was Markello Braxton. At first, things seemed good. Markello was charming. He knew how to say the right things. He made Nykeria feel seen, wanted. They began dating, and for a while, she believed he might be the one. But slowly, things began to shift. Markello didn't like when Nykeria went out without him. He questioned who she was texting, where she was going, who she talked to. What started as love soon turned into control. He isolated her from friends. He'd argue over small things. And when she tried to leave, he'd apologize, promise to change, beg for another chance. And like so many women trying to believe in love, she gave him those chances. Their relationship became a cycle. Break up, make up, repeat. Sometimes weeks apart, sometimes months. But the red flags never stopped waving. He didn't need fists to hurt her. He used words, silence, manipulation. Nykeria started pulling away from him. She tried to create boundaries for her daughter's safety and for her own peace. But Markello wasn't ready to let go. And in the end, that refusal would turn fatal. In the weeks leading up to her death, the tension in Nykeria's life was quietly but unmistakably rising. Markello Braxton was no longer just an ex-boyfriend. He had become a looming presence, a shadow that followed her even when she tried to move forward. At first, it started with the usual text messages, missed calls, voicemails. They were frequent, but not alarming, at least not at first. I miss you. Let's fix this. We were supposed to be a family. Nykeria didn't respond. She had made up her mind. She was done. And for a while, it seemed like he'd gotten the message. But when she ignored his messages, his tone changed. The texts became aggressive. The calls turned obsessive. Now it wasn't "I miss you." It was "You're nothing without me. You think you can just walk away? I'll show you." He started showing up at her house. Uninvited, banging on the door in the middle of the night. Watching her car from down the street. Even driving by while her daughter played outside. Friends told her to call the police. Family urged her to file a report. But Nykeria, like many women in her position, hesitated. Maybe it was fear. Maybe she still hoped he'd go away if she stayed quiet. Maybe she didn't want to escalate things. After all, he hadn't touched her. Not yet. And when he saw her brother visiting more often, it only added fuel to the fire. Markello saw every boundary Nykeria set as a challenge. Every step she took toward peace, he took personally. And in his mind, he wasn't losing her. He was being betrayed.
Nykeria was 30 years old. She was just really getting...
One friend later told investigators. She told me, "I think he's going to do something. I just don't know what." Another said she was planning to stay with relatives for a while, just to feel safe. But the thing about violence is, It doesn't wait for the right moment. It doesn't wait until you're ready. It doesn't knock first. Markello didn't come back to talk. He didn't come back to apologize. In the days before the shooting, he had started disappearing. No one could reach him. He wasn't posting online. He wasn't going to work. He was just gone. Some people thought he was finally letting go. But in reality, he was waiting, boiling. And when he returned to Nykeria's home one last time, he didn't knock. He didn't speak. He just pulled the trigger. It was a quiet Thursday night in Robinsonville, Mississippi, July 11th, 2025. A day like any other, humid, still, and unremarkable. Inside her modest home, Nykeria Jude was spending the evening with her daughter, Marlaysia, and her 24-year-old brother. It was supposed to be peaceful, safe, normal. Nykeria had no idea that night would be her last. Sometime after 10 p.m., Braxton pulled up outside the house. No headlights, no engine noise. He moved like someone on a mission, someone who had already made up his mind. There were no calls, no texts, no knocking. He forced his way in. What happened next was fast, violent, and irreversible. Markello opened fire almost immediately. He shot Nykeria multiple times at close range. She didn't stand a chance. No time to run. No time to scream. Just terror. And then, silence. Her brother tried to intervene, lunging toward the gunman in a desperate attempt to protect his sister and niece. Markello shot him too. Then, he turned to the child. 6-year-old Marlaysia, caught in the middle of a nightmare no child should ever see. Markello pointed the gun at her and pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through her tiny body, critically wounding her. The entire attack lasted less than a minute. 3 people shot, a mother killed, a child bleeding on the floor, a family torn apart by one man's rage. Neighbors heard the chaos, screams, gunshots, then silence. One of them called 911, barely able to get the words out. I heard screaming. I think I heard shots. There's a little girl in there. By the time emergency responders arrived, it was too late to save Nykeria. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her brother was still conscious, but in critical condition. He was rushed to the hospital. Marlaysia, just 6 years old, was clinging to life. She was barely breathing, covered in blood, still in her pajamas. Paramedics stabilized her and loaded her into the ambulance with lights flashing and sirens blaring. She was transported to the nearest trauma unit, where doctors immediately began life-saving surgery. And Markello? He was gone. By the time police secured the scene, he had already disappeared. No one saw which way he ran. No one knew where he went. But what he left behind was unspeakable. A woman murdered in cold blood. A child nearly killed. A brother wounded. And a neighborhood forever changed. Inside that home, blood-stained floors, bullet holes in the walls, and the eerie stillness that follows tragedy. A child's toy lay untouched. Dinner plates still on the table.
Except the new Chanel shop spree, and every time I pop out, you know I hate
And as police began their
I'm that
investigation,
beach hoe,
one
geek
thing
like
was
me,
always
no
clear.
squat, doesn't
This was
all
a
big
break-in.
seats,
This was
I'm
a
a cheap,
break-in
wipe me
or
down,
a
small niggas, tall niggas, don't have no small
It was
free, and child learn, it's short, fast, cause my
The shooting sent shockwaves through Robinsonville, Mississippi. A mother was dead. Her 6-year-old daughter was clinging to life. And the man responsible, Braxton, was nowhere to be found. Police arrived within minutes of the 911 call. What they walked into was a scene of pure devastation. Nykeria Jude lay lifeless in her own home, her body riddled with gunshot wounds. Her daughter, Marlaysia, had also been shot. She was still breathing, but barely. Her 24-year-old brother had been hit too, wounded, but conscious. The scene was chaotic. Paramedics rushed to stabilize the child and the brother. Officers fanned out through the neighborhood, questioning anyone who might have seen which way Braxton fled. But he was gone. By morning, the community was in mourning. Friends and neighbors lit candles outside Nykeria's home. Flowers piled up on the porch. Stuffed animals, balloons, handwritten notes from strangers who had never even met her. Local news crews set up just beyond the police tape. Reporters called it a domestic dispute turned deadly. But to the people who loved Nykeria, it was more than a headline. It was a nightmare. Social media lit up with grief and anger. Posts from friends called for justice. Hashtags like #JusticeForNykeria and hashtag Stop Domestic Violence started trending across the state. Meanwhile, law enforcement launched a full-scale manhunt. Markello Braxton was officially a fugitive. Police warned the public that he was armed and dangerous. Helicopters were dispatched to search nearby wooded areas. Roadblocks were set up. Detectives interviewed relatives, friends, co-workers, anyone who might know where he had gone. For 3 days, there was no sign of him. People locked their doors. Parents held their kids a little tighter. A once quiet town now lived under the weight of fear and fury. Then came the discovery. On the 3rd day after the shooting, officers found a vehicle parked deep in the woods near Tunica County. Not far from it, they found Braxton's body. He had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The manhunt was over. There was no note, no apology, no explanation, just a bullet and a broken family left behind. News of his death sparked mixed emotions. Some felt relief, others were angry, but everyone agreed it wasn't justice. It was just the end of a coward's escape. Meanwhile, little Marlaysia remained in the hospital. She had undergone emergency surgery. Doctors called her condition critical but stable. Family members stayed by her side day and night. When she was finally released, she left the hospital in a wheelchair, clutching a teddy, bare and flanked by 2 police officers. She had survived, but everything she knew, her mother, her home, her sense of safety, was gone. A child scarred forever by one man's rage, and a community still asking why. Nykeria Jude didn't die because she was weak. She died because someone refused to let her live in peace. Someone who mistook control for love and obsession for commitment. What happened to her wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was part of a much larger epidemic, one that's far too common, yet far too often ignored. Domestic violence doesn't always look like bruises or broken bones. Sometimes it looks like silence, like isolation, like walking on eggshells in your own home. Nykeria did what so many do. She tried to leave quietly. She tried to protect her daughter. She tried to survive. But when someone is determined to hurt you, even your silence becomes a threat. And too often, the system doesn't catch up until it's already too late. According to the CDC, 1 in 3 women in the United States experiences intimate partner violence. 1 in 3. And more than half of female homicide victims are killed by a current or former partner. This is not rare. This is not random. This is real, and it's happening every single day. Marlaysia survived the unimaginable. She will grow up without her mother, carrying a trauma that no child should ever have to bear. Her life was changed in an instant because of one man's rage. But her story is not over, and neither is Nykeria's. Because their story is now our responsibility to remember, to share, and to act. If you or someone you love is in a relationship that feels unsafe, whether physically, emotionally, or psychologically, please don't wait. Don't wait for the threats to turn into action. Don't wait until you're planning a funeral instead of a future. There is help. There is hope. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7. Call 800-799-7233 or text START to 88788. You will not be judged. You will be heard. And you will not be alone. Nykeria's voice was stolen. Let yours be louder. If you're watching this and you believe stories like hers need to be told, shared, and remembered, do something about it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment "Justice for Nykeria" below to honor her memory. Let her name be more than a headline. Let it be a reminder, a warning, and a call to protect those who still have time to get out. Because love should never hurt, and silence should never be a death sentence.